There we go. So thank you everybody for attending our October resource group. Super excited to have Dana Johnson with us today in our contributor spotlight. You can find us on startadbrewery.com. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel if you'd like to have updates or see these resource groups later, because we do have a lot of other industry programming going on today. I suspect we'll see a lot of people watching this later. But super excited to quiz Dana. There's so much stuff that I don't know about stainless, so this is kind of fun for me too. So our format today, as usual, we're gonna talk about our sponsor for a couple minutes and express appreciation. Then we'll do our contributor spotlight portion of the programming with Dana. Then we'll do some Q&A with Dana, and then we'll move to any other Q&A that any of you may have. Questions that you bring to the table, any other random stuff that you want to talk about. So that's kind of how we format our hour. Upcoming events, I wanted to make sure to do this at the beginning and at the end today because we have so many things coming up. Next Tuesday, we have our first Tuesday talks with the craft beer professionals, and we have a panel of Start a Brewery contributors that are going to talk about game changers for your new brewery. So that's going to be Dustin, who's with us here today, Ren Navarro from Beer Diversity, Misty Gordon from Misty Gordon Creative, Ben Weston from Hoptown Handles, Nancy Trigg from Arrived, and then Andrew Copeland from Craft Beer Professionals, who obviously is running his conference today. So that's going to be super fun, and that will be kind of an introduction to the partnership we have with Craft Beer Professionals for our new webinar series. So that's going to be quarterly, and Candace is going to kick that off on Wednesday, November 2nd, with the first session, and she's going to do trademarks for the craft brewer. So those are both coming up. We're also in talks about a new podcast, so we're hoping to bring that online soon, and we'll let you know more about that as we know more about that. We're still trying to figure out the ins and outs of that, but that will be a super fun, new and different way to reach a different audience, I think. And our friends Alex and Michael at ABS insist that that's what the brewers do all day is listen to podcasts. So perhaps we can be part of that. Okay, I always like to revisit our mission, why we're here. Our mission at Start a Brewery is to create a beer industry community to raise awareness and educate startups, and also simultaneously lower the barrier for those who are looking to live their dream. So we want to educate and lift up and raise the bar for quality for the startups at the same time that we invite more people to the table and help them to get here. Okay, a little bit about Arrived. First, thank you to the Arrived crew. Arrived was founded in the Avery Tap Room by a couple of tech geeks who love craft beer and the people who serve it. I don't think they always say that Avery is where they were sitting, but that's where they started their software. And they say the more time spent talking shop in tap rooms, the more, there we go. The more evident the need for a taproom POS became. The first 6 months found us with our laptops at the bar, coding our system with real-time feedback from servers and managers. In early 2017, we were ready to spread our wings. So today, what started as a craft-centric POS system has now flourished into serving all kinds of food, drink, music, hospitality, and other partners. Our customers include breweries, cideries, pizzerias, meaderies, distilleries, kombucheries, music venues, food halls, axe throwing spots, food trucks, and more. Regardless of our growth, we've stayed true to our roots by investing time in our customers face-to-face, hiring a team of industry experts, and passionately leading the revolution of service by keeping the heart in hospitality. I myself have talked a lot about Arrived, especially with the pandemic, and Dana and I were visiting about the timeliness of their remote touchless technology, and how everybody was able to utilize that to navigate the pandemic. All right, so let's move into our contributor spotlight. Oh, you have your app?
Got the app up right now.
Excellent. All right, so this is Dana Johnson. Dana is with Burco, now a Diversey company. And I've known Dana, we were just talking about this since, I don't know, the mid-90s. My brother got started in Denver with his High Point Brewing. He was starting to contract brew And Dana was part of his contract brew adventure before his whole world turned to distribution. So I've known Dana longer than I've been in the industry, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
So Dana, let's do a little intro. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you like to do when you're not working on
Sure.
beer.
Yeah. So my name's Dana Johnson, as she said. I've been with Burco actually since 1977, believe it or not.
Oh.
45 years now. How does that happen? I don't know, but it did. I started, it was my mom worked there. She was, an office worker, and I happened to just turn 18. And it was a couple weeks after Elvis died, or reportedly died, as my Australian ex-boss used to say. And I'm like, I don't want to get into that. But I said, hey, Mom, I was doing landscaping. And I said, hey, Mom, sure they can't use any help out at Burco. I really, this stuff is backbreaking. I was getting minimum wage, which was less than $3 an hour at the time. And my first summer job, I was making like $4.25 or $4.50 an hour, which was huge for a high school kid back then. Well, anyway, it was, hard work and stuff, but I really, if you don't know Burco, we do a lot of, the company was started in the red meat industry. So they make purple ink, if you are familiar with that. They were the ones who started that, and for the USDA to grade the carcasses with, tripe wash, things like that, hook and trolley cleaners. It was a huge, way to learn about things. They didn't do any brewing, but one thing led to another. I didn't go to college very long. I started accounting up at Mesa State College in Grand Junction in 78, and dropped out. Like after the first semester, I was like, I can't do this. I'm falling asleep. And I wrote the owner a letter, Florence Powers at the time. And I said, hey, I really want to come back to work for you. I think I want to work for Burco for a long time. Well, it has been. So I started working in the lab in 79, and was doing a lot with hides, believe it or not. I was, analyzing cured cattle hides for cure. They want to get a lot of salt in them because they ship them overseas, and the hides have to, be able to withstand that journey. And so I learned a lot about that. My first patent, believe, was actually on a hide curing additive. So I learned, my boss was a Vietnam vet, and he taught me everything I know about chemistry. So I was coming, as I say, you can't think outside the box if there is no box. I learned so much. Every day I was going to work was, I had great mentors. I ran a bacteria detection system we called Contact It for 35 years. I started pouring plates in 81, and they finally retired it in 2016. And I did that, and started home brewing in 89. I'd been working in the lab for about 10 years and doing this, kind of aseptic packaging of poured culture plates that the food industry used to check their sanitation for bacteria. And so I read Charlie Papazian's book. I thought, oh, wow, I can do this. Well, the first 2 or 3 batches weren't very good. But when so 5 years went by, I volunteered to be a server at the GABF in 94. Never had even considered selling, sanitation chemicals to the brewing industry. Got on the other side of the table in 94, was looking around. I remember looking up Tom Chase, who was the brewer at Fish Brewing in Olympia, Washington. Hey, Tom, what do you use to clean? He said, oh, caustic acid sanitizer, same as everybody else. And I went, whoa, we sell that. Yeah. It hadn't been to the brewing industry yet, but so one thing with my formulation chemistry, experience, I was able to formulate a lot of the, we started with non-caustic cleaning, and that we got our first article published in '96 in the March, April issue of the New Brewer on a non-caustic approach to cleaning the brew house. And that it launched it. I went to my first CBC in '95 in Austin. I was sold. So I just told him I was hitting the wall, doing the stuff I was in the lab in '95. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. I know what I want to do. And my boss said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to call in the brewing industry. So long story made short, that's what I've been doing ever since. But to answer your question about what else do I like to do, I'm an avid Broncos fan. It's been a little tough this year, but I see, is that the Commanders? No, is that Washington or?
No, that's the Kansas City Chiefs.
That's, our arch rival. Yeah, I should have known with the, but yeah, that's about where my seats are, a little bit higher up. My son and I go to just about every Bronco game, and it's been a little rough this year, but I also like the Avs a lot, and go Avs, won the cup finally after a long drought, and the Rockies are even harder to watch than the Broncos. So, but I'm a big baseball fan as well. I've been cheering on San Diego, and last night was a little rough for watching that game as kind of a pseudo Padres fan. So I don't know, Candace. I hope they can come back. We'll see. But yeah, that's kind of my life in a nutshell. I've got 3 grown kids, and now I've got 5 grandkids. And the 5th one that just came is a grandson. So I have 4 granddaughters and now a grandson finally. So he's 4 months old.
Congratulations. Are you going to get to go visit?
Yeah, they're all here in town. And
good.
Yeah, once I finally retire, I really hope to spend more time with my grandkids and be a bigger part of their life, just working all the time and, just constant brewery stuff. It really, when you're in this industry, it really does chew up a lot of your time, especially as many committees as I'm on. I'm on 2 MBAA committees and really 3 MBA webinar committee chair, also the Rocky Mountain District technical co-chair, and on the safety committee for MBA and the BA safety subcommittee. So I don't have a lot of free time. And then I make deliveries on my way home. I play delivery boy to my favorite customers. So I'm pretty busy.
I hear it. So you've covered some of it, but specifically with your clients, what problems do you solve? So it sounds like you're cleaning and helping to disinfect as well as safety.
Absolutely, yeah. So as I said, I really try to get people off of caustic, and we sell a lot of caustic now. But that was the safety aspect of when I got into the industry. I was going around Denver, and I just saw a total lack of PPE. The personal protective equipment being used, and coming out of the meat industry where everybody slickers up and has the face shield and the goggles, and they're spraying foam around. And I was like, oh my God. I went back to work and said, we need to come up with a non-caustic approach for these guys. So we did that for a long, long time. And, kind of came up with that whole acid. You and I were discussing, it was actually at Lone Tree Brewing where I met you, and in the original Lone Tree Brewing, which was in Denver, not the one down in Centennial or, Lone Tree where it is now. But that's a different company. But yeah, I was a friend, Ken Peel was the guy that said, hey, if you run acid first, this stuff works pretty good, this non-caustic approach. And took it back to the guy who the chemist that formulated our first non-caustic cleaner for the brewery. And he said, that makes total sense. You're loosening up the soil with the acid, and doesn't necessarily remove it. Then you come back with the non-caustic oxygenated cleaner, and he goes, it's probably good for the metal too. So I'll get into more on that later. But yeah, that's what I spend most of my time doing is these days is helping small brewers get off the ground with their sanitation, caustic acid sanitizer. We sell a lot of PAA. I'm a big fan of acidified sodium chloride, which you don't hear a whole lot about, but that's my homebrew favorite is activating sodium chloride, which is NaClO2. So it's salt with an oxygen attached to it. And you acidify that with citric and you get a bunch of oxychloral species, and chlorine dioxide being the one that is really potent, but it's lower oxygen. We sell a lot of PAA, peracetic acid. So if you're familiar with that one, we sell that. And I help a lot of brewers that, come out of home brewing and they're used to using their home brewing chemicals, and they'll give me a call and say, hey, Dana, I hear you're the guy to talk to. So I'm on a lot of Pro Brewer and obviously starterbrewery.com and MBA and all of that. And that's where I spend a lot of my time during the day is helping people kind of get the new equipment. So to getting into your question about passivation, that whole acid first thing, and then draining it, but not rinsing it, which is totally foreign to a lot of brewers. And still I have to fight this on a daily basis. And then run your non-caustic oxygenated cleaner actually lays down what's called a phosphate silicate conversion coating. What does that mean? Well, your glass line in the tank. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it means what was beer put into prior to cans? Everybody put their beer in cans now, but when I got in the industry, everybody was bottling, and it was a joke to put your beer in a can. Well, I was calling on Oscar Blues when they were doing 2 at a time up in Lions, and to watch them grow and become what they did, it's been fun. But getting back to that passivation thing, that's really where people call me up and say, hey, how do I passivate my new equipment? And I've got it all queued up and ready to go. And if they buy from us, great. If they don't, it's not a stipulation that they got to buy to get the information. And that's been a little bit of an issue with, the management. They at times feel I give away a little too much information. I'm like, it's out there on the web. They're contacting me. Who do you think they're going to come back to? Why do you think they buy from us? Because they know you're going to have technical support they need down the road if they need it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Somebody answered their email in the first place.
Yeah. And I get back with them. I take pride in getting back with people within minutes. I do that every day.
Yeah. So what's the coolest project you've ever worked on?
Oh, so I also arrived, spent a lot of time up at Avery Brewing.
Yeah.
They were, to be honest, with my favorite customer, and for about 20 years, early 2000s, started. We got when they were on the alley, not where they are now, but they were off of 55th and Arapahoe up in Boulder, and I spent a lot of time up there, and they were a really good customer. And at the time, they were, this is going back to 2007. They were using a chlorinated caustic of ours to clean kegs. Homemade machine, wasn't recycling it, and they were wasting a bunch of chemical down the drain. And got a call from them, and they said, hey, we love you, Dana, but we got this new machine. We've got a Comac 2T machine, and we really want to, would like to, recycle the chemical and try to find something better that's not going to waste so much chemical. And I said, I've always liked getting people away from caustic. And the biggest issue that I always see in kegs is what? Beer stone. What is beer stone? Calcium oxalate. In the dairy industry, it's called milkstone. But anyway, it's really like a hard water deposit with one big difference. It's got a protein component to it, and it sticks to the metal. And when you have a beer stone problem, that feels like sandpaper, you got your work cut out for you, because that is hard to get off. It takes a lot of chemical, and really it takes a lot of mechanical action, and I mean scrubbing, to get it off. So the best way to not get it is to avoid it in the first place, right? Well, so getting back to your question, I said, I've got this idea about using a nitric phosphoric blend. We called it Ultraniter. And I said, we've also got this non-foaming detergent additive. It's called X-Puma. And we make a lot of jokes about that, because I tell people it has bits of real panther in it, but it works 60% of the time. It works all the time. But anyway, I said, I want to try this. Let's give this a shot. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to, the traditional caustic approach, which I don't like because it builds up beer stone like crazy. And anyway, long story made short, they were MicroStar kegs. It worked far better than even I thought it would. And we ended up getting a patent on it. That was my second patent as the main inventor. And kind of the long story made short on Avery, with that keg cleaning process, it cut their costs by 90% over the previous method. And they, at the end of their tenure with that machine, they started at 300 kegs a week. By the time they got rid of that machine, they were up to 300 kegs a day on 1 gallon of acid and 2 ounces of X-Puma. And it worked, and they didn't have beer stone problems. I gave a talk on it in Boston at the CBC in 2009, and I interviewed Steve Breezley at the time. I said, so how many, everybody has dirty kegs. What's your return on your kegs? He kind of looked at me funny. He goes, what do you mean? I go, well, you get dirty kegs, and how many of you had to, bring back in because the keg was dirty since you started this 2 years ago? I said, well, we had one, but we thought it was a dirty tap line. So that to answer your question, was the coolest project I've ever been involved with.
And that totally makes sense to be the ultra cool. I think the patent and the results, especially the dramatic financial results, speak for themselves there.
Yeah.
That's cool. How about the most complex or problematic project?
That one, there's a couple on that one, but I think the cleaning the kettle, that's where I got my start. And writing that article on the acid first approach, totally, if traditional cleaning in a brewery, it's done with a rinse, a caustic, a rinse, and then an acid. Works fine, right? Well, there's a couple of problems with the approach that we came up with. There was still soil left at the end that would be hanging there, but just, wouldn't come off. So adding hydrogen peroxide to caustic, you can't do it in concentrate because they'll blow up. But when you add hydrogen peroxide to a caustic solution that's 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit, so you got to make sure the caustic's in the water first, and then you add the 34% hydrogen peroxide. Well, that's 10 times greater than the stuff you buy in the store in terms of concentration from the hydrogen peroxide. And boy, that works great to remove the protein, the baked on stuff. And it's been really amazing to just have these total turnarounds of really dirty brew houses and spending so much time. And it takes a half an hour. The stuff's only going to survive in caustic. The hydrogen peroxide in caustic only lasts for about half an hour. That's all you need. You do a 30-minute CIP in your kettle, and then you rinse hot, and then maybe run an acid if you need to, depending on hard water conditions. That one is probably and then the biofine deposit, same approach, caustic and hydrogen peroxide. People like using biofine and Nalco 1072. Well, what is that? It's silicon dioxide problem with that stuff is it plates out on the metal. It's so opposites attract, right? You got the positive and the negative. So it's positively charged biofine, and the yeast and the proteins are negatively charged. So it grabs them and pulls them down. So the quote from brewers is find, not filtered. So that's how they clear their beer for, things like Kolsch and that kind of thing, where you don't want to filter out all the flavor. Well, that's fine, but removing that silicon dioxide fining agent, you can't use acid, because much like our approach for passivating metal, you're going to plate that out. Well, this isn't a good one to plate out, because when it leaves a white film that you cannot get off very easily. And you got to use hot caustic and hydrogen peroxide. Well, I ended up writing an article in the Technical Quarterly for the MBA the end of 2018 on how to do this. But when it's really bad, you need a 20% solution of caustic to pull this stuff off. Because somebody will assume it's beer stone. It's white. It's got to be beer stone. No, it's not. So it's smooth. That's the differentiator. If the stuff is smooth and you can't get it off with acid, you probably have a silicate deposit. And places like San Diego in a drought, what's going to go up? As the water table comes down, hardness goes up. But the other thing that people don't realize is silicate level goes up too, or silica. And once you plate silica to a metal, and anaphones too, silicone anaphones can do that as well. You got to use hot caustic to get that off. The only acid that will pull it is a poison. It's called hydrofluoric acid, HF. And that's not something you want to be around. It's a carcinogen, a mutagen, a teratogen, any bad gen, hydrofluoric is it. So, but yeah, that's probably the two that I've, kind of take a lot of pride in for helping people with.
Very cool. All right, well, let's get into these 5 best practices about taking care of your stainless. Where do you begin?
Oh, yeah, that's so chloride. That's another thing that getting away from chlorinated alkaline cleaners. That's a really good thing to do. So I think number one is when you're talking about keeping stainless in good shape, you really want to use some chemicals that are have the right kind of additives in them. So again, sodium hydroxide by itself, some people will just say, oh, I just use caustic. Well, in our you really kind of want to get a caustic that's got silicate in it, and that's a corrosion inhibitor on the alkaline side. And that's really important. The other thing too, let me find my notes here. So my top things that I put down just right off the cuff when I was thinking about this is a lot of brewers don't measure their chemicals. They just kind of, really go by their manufacturer's recommendation. Don't just glug it in, because you're going to waste money. And especially for newbies, it's like the industry saying is, well, if a little's good, more is better. No, it's really not. You can run into problems with that, especially something with like our the ex Puma thing. It's like it's 2 mils per gallon of cleaning solution. That's not very much. It's not 2 ounces. If you're using 2 ounces per gallon, that's 15 times more than you need. So go by the manufacturer's recommendation. Use the right temperature. The other problem I see that people do, especially with nitric containing acids, once you go above 140 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 60 degrees C, you're going to gas off the nitric. One, you don't want to be breathing that stuff, but then you're taking away the passivating part of that. So if you've got say a nitric phosphoric, you gas off the nitric, you just got phosphoric. You need that nitric in there to keep the beer stone, problem away. So that's an issue. So use the right temperature. Times, like some people, I'll run it for an hour. Why are you running your pump for an hour? It's probably clean after the first 15 to 30 minutes. So you're wasting time, energy, and like, I just like to walk away and then come back. I'll hear that on K Clean. It's like, that's probably not even safe either. What if the thing, you know, lets go or something? You're going to burn up your pump. And then the other thing that I see that, so number 5 is trust your eyes. If something doesn't look clean, and really just get in there. It can be as simple as, getting in the manway with a flashlight and looking for dry areas. If you got a dry area that's, in other words, it's like a biofilm buildup will shed water. Why? Because they're hydrophobic. So what does that mean? Water hating. So if you rinse your tank and it's not drying uniformly, and you've got a spot that's just kind of almost like when you wax your car, how the water beads up and it won't, well, if that happens be aware of that. And if you look for discolorations, you got a Croissant line or something that's not coming off of your fermenter or in your kettle, and the heat exchangers, like, you can't see inside of them, but look what's coming out of that. And when I get people to actually try the caustic and hydrogen peroxide thing, and I go, you're going to be blown away how much green crap comes out of your heat exchanger, because it really bubbles up the hops out of the heat exchanger. With some of these styles these days, the late edition hoppings, you're packing a lot of, you're going to get hops in your heat exchanger. It's just part of the deal. So keep your heat exchanger clean. And that's probably my top 5.
Gotcha. So in the passivation of things, well, I can ask questions later. Okay, so tell us about your ideal client.
Ideal client. Most of them that call are very receptive to some of the different methods that we have, especially acid first on occasion, or this adding hydrogen peroxide to caustic. So the ideal client is one that it calls me up and said, hey, we're having issues, or maybe not having issues, but I think we could be doing better. I like to help dial in people to, spend less time cleaning, do it safer, and do it more effectively, and win medals. I haven't even really talked about it, but I've been judging at GABF since 2015. There's a difference when, what gets somebody like Comrade with an IPA, American IPA, 423 entries to the gold medal. Not once, but they did it in 2019, and they just did it again this year. I think that sanitation gets overlooked sometimes when you're having a consistent product, and it's great to win medals and stuff, but what you want your customers happy, you want them coming back, and you want them feeling good the next day. And I see a lot of breweries that will, kind of let things go on sanitation. Their sales drop. And then what happens? Well, either they have to sell, or they go out of business, and it's really sad to see. So that's my ideal customer, is somebody who really cares about sanitation.
Gotcha. So what would our key flags be when we're talking with somebody that would indicate that maybe we should send them your direction? Exactly that. Somebody who's concerned about sanitation or has questions about how best to do these things.
Yeah, I think and it isn't just trying to just track their costs, trying to get the cheapest chemical per gallon. I mean, really look at how much you're using. Look at your use cost, not how much, like, okay, yeah, somebody's going to sell me a caustic that's half the price of yours, Dana. I'm like, okay, good luck with that, because you're going to use twice as much, and guess what? It's not going to work half as well. So I ran into that yesterday with somebody, and like, well, I've been trying your caustic and hydrogen peroxide thing in my kettle, and it's not working. And he gave me the amounts, and which caustic are you using? Emailed me back this morning, and it was a competitor. I said, it's not going to work as well as ours. our stuff, and I gave them the amount. I go, use ours, try it. And once you go to it, you'll see the difference. So.
And how would somebody reach you? Did you put your info into the chat?
I have not, but I can do that. The best
Okay.
way to reach me is I spend a lot of time on email, and my email address is dana.johnson@diversey.com. And yeah, we got acquired by Diversey in December, and it's been great for me because I'm wearing Diversey blue now. I've gone to 2 trade shows, Burco and Diversey. We were in Minnesota, and then we were in Providence, and they're letting me we actually sold more into the craft brewing industry than they did. And so my title is Technical Director of Craft Brewing for Burco, a Diversey company, and I hope to close out my career with that title.
I can't see any reason that you wouldn't. All right, anybody have questions? I have some, but I suspect some of you who do more brewing like Dustin will have better questions than I.
Yeah, fire away. You can kick it off, Laura, if you want.
Okay. I'm curious about passivation. I know that that's something that you're supposed to do for brand new stainless. Do you do that then on any sort of regular basis, or is it a one-shot deal?
No. So I asked an AB employee up in Fort Collins one time, I go, how often do you passivate your tanks? He goes, well, we don't. They use a 20% nitric solution on them before we put them in service, and then we never do it again. And then, so passivation, I think with the method that I described, and if you want that method, you can look on our website or just email me and I'll send you the procedure. But using the acid, no rinse, and then following with the non-caustic cleaner, I'd like to see that done a minimum of every 6 months, like spring and fall. Like if you do it right now, you should be good. You just use your normal good cleaner for another 6 months, and then repeat it, because it's kind of a deep cleaning thing where you get a lot of the kind of protein stains and that kind of stuff, and it puts the metal back in a really nice condition that's nice and shiny. And if you see the article that I wrote where we have the before and after picture, especially the after picture, and it works on a lot of different soils too. Wine tanks, cider. It doesn't have to be beer. It can be wine, cider, kombucha, anything that's stainless, especially 304. These days it's coming over from China. It's not the best metal I've ever seen, and it can be kind of rough. And if you're getting rust around the welds, it can kind of help mitigate that rusting around the welds. But take care of your metal, because if you don't take care of your metal, especially if you get iron in there, iron is a oxidative staling agent for beer, and you're going to have shelf life issues on your beer. And like I said, with our phosphate silicate conversion coating method that we use, it really kind of glass lines the tank, and your beer is going to be flavor neutral. And that's really the big key too with passivation, is you want to, even if you don't use our method, a lot of them just want to use the acid. The other way to do that is use something with a nitric, like nitric phosphoric. Go ahead and rinse it these days though. Don't do an acid followed by just draining it like you used to. What I call the old school method of passivation was an acid, no rinse or anything, just let it air dry. If you do that these days, you're probably going to get a rust buildup. It's called flash rusting. So you want to, either do the acid first thing, then follow with the alkaline silicated cleaner, or just go ahead and give your acid a rinse and do a 24-hour air dry. And what the air dry does is the oxygen in the air forms the chromium oxide layer. And that's the traditional method of passivation. You can use citric acid. I think the experts that know a lot more about passivation always say citric. I'm not a big fan. I'm sorry, it just doesn't offer enough protection. I think citric is a really good chelator for iron. Again, rust. It's a really good way to chelate iron rust, but it doesn't offer the same level of protection that you get with kind of the conversion coating method, or even the chromium oxide layer, which you can get by using nitric. What is nitric? HNO3. Okay, so it's got that oxygen component, but it's a passivating acid to stainless steel. So that's kind of my advice on passivation is, to answer your question, do it every 6 months. With our method, you'll keep your tank will last for years. You want it to look brand new.
Do you treat all of your metal equipment that way, or just the tanks?
So it's not something you have to do on the outside of the tank, but yeah, basically, and it's also copper friendly. So if you say you have a copper piece, you got to be careful. You don't want to use caustic on copper, and you have to be careful with nitric on copper as well. But it will also, to answer your question, yeah, you can do that. You can passivate copper with this. And I've got a copper cleaning protocol. It's the same method, and I've showed before and after pennies with it and shining up, copper that way. If you don't really want to do that, if you're in a distillery, you don't want to do that on a copper still, because that copper actually contributes to the flavor. And if you seal that copper up, it's not going to last real long. But I don't recommend it for distilleries on copper columns.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Anybody with questions? Eric, Paul, Dustin, Kyle, those of you who do a lot of brewing, Catherine. Open for other questions as well. If anybody wants to put something new and different on the table. Dustin, anything?
No comment. I did a ton of information. It certainly knows the stuff.
Thank you. Yeah,
Baptism by fire, I suspect. Go ahead.
We can talk about beer too. I mean, we've got about 15 minutes left here. We should talk. Who all went to GABF and what'd you think? What's your favorite beers? What you've been drinking lately? Hi, Julie. Really enjoyed your talks on this week, Julie. I learned a lot.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm running on like 0 sleep, so thank you.
Yeah.
Travel. But no, I went to GABF. I was there Thursday and Friday and a tiny bit of Saturday, not too long, but I don't know. I'm always looking at it from a business perspective. The thing that struck me was that there was a lot of big presence from small breweries, which was kind of interesting to see. And then, older is a relative word, right? Like I fit into that category. Like I'm an older drinker at this point, but it felt like an older crowd, that was there. Which, on some notes, that's a good thing, right? We generally have more money to spend, which is great. On the downside is that I worry where the young people are. So, yeah.
So you're talking business owners, or you're talking about
no
attendees?
consumers, just the crowd.
Attendees.
Yeah, attendees. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. But some good beers. There were some nano breweries on the floor that were well represented that are making interesting stuff. So no, it was fun. It was nice to be back in person.
Yeah. I went Saturday afternoon and they're starting to hurt. You talk about being an older, I went to my first GABF in 1989 at the Merchandise Mart in Denver. I don't know, Rick, if you're still on, and Laura, where the Merchandise Mart was, but it was tiny, and it was, there was not a lot of good beer that year. I had just started homebrewing, but, my interest in beer really began in the mid 80s, going to Old Chicago and doing the World Beer Tour, I think they called it. And they had 110 beers that you had to get through to get your name on the wall of foam or something like that, become a foamer, and you got the shirt and all that. And that's really kind of where my love of different beer styles happened. But, and I didn't start brewing till 89. But when I went to my first GABF in 89, I knew enough that some of that beer was not very good. No, it was, the industry just hadn't evolved enough. But my take on the GABF this year was I was just blown away on the overall quality. There's much fewer diacetyl bombs in judging too. I just see I've seen a big increase in the level of quality across the board in beers and people and brewing the style too. That's the other thing is, of 100 styles, there's what does it take to win a medal? Well, you got to brew the style. You can't have any off, flavors or aromas. And, you have to have that extra edge over your competitor. And I Cannonball Creek is one of my favorite breweries here in town. They've never not medaled at GABF since 2013. I don't think too many other breweries that opened around that time can say that. In fact, I know they're the only one that can. So it's really having customers like that really get back to that ideal client thing. That's who I want.
So have you seen a lot of people entering their beer in different styles other than what maybe they brewed in order to get that edge for that medal?
Yeah, I think sometimes you do kind of have to push the envelope a little bit on styles, certain styles. You kind of, we were talking earlier about, one of my favorite ones, Judge, is chili beer. That is a unique category. Once you put chili into any beer, it goes in chili category. You will get it kicked out of every other category. Once you put a chili in your beer, enter it in chili beer. But having said that, now you can't go over the top with that. The ones that do it really nice, have a nice balance, probably don't have a lot of lingering, chili heat. But I think the silver medal winner that had cocoa nibs and, is a big black stout with cocoa nibs and chili. It's just a wonderful beer. So, and it's memorable, out of the 300 beers that I judged, that one sticks out as one of my favorites.
That's a lot to be able to distinguish yourself among that many beers.
Yeah.
Drew, thank you for the link. Julie, thank you for the, interesting and tasty Pico de Gallo. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, Drew.
I thought I was scared of the Pico de Gallo beer, and it was brewed by one of my friends. And I was like, no, I am not drinking this. I'm going to get heartburn. It's going to be awful. It had Pico de Gallo and cilantro, Dana, please forgive me. I am not a production gal, so I'm just going to screw this up real bad. But she said something about how they smoked the chilies and like the Pico de Gallo ingredients, right? And then actually put the cilantro in some kind of like tincture.
Yeah.
So it was like really compressed and flavorful. And then they put it in the brew. So it was like kind of just its own flavor on its own without like being weird. It was I actually really enjoyed it, surprisingly.
Oh, good.
So it was
cilantro can be really soapy. I mean, it's like cardamom, and it can be pretty dominant, and that's interesting.
I was angry that I liked it more than anything else.
Yeah. Another unique beer that I tried. So another customer of ours, I want to give him a little shout out, is Blind Tiger in Topeka, Kansas. Won 2 golds, one on Bach and one on their smoke beer. And I went over and talked to John Dean Saturday at GABF and congratulated him, obviously, on their 2 golds and winning the Brewery of the Year in their category. But I tried his smoke beer and I said, well, it's Wireman, right? He goes, no, it's actually a 150-year-old fence post that I smoked some malt with. And I went, you're kidding me. It was fabulous. And it was the best smoke beer I think I've ever had in my life. And they won a gold medal on it. And it was with some kind of wood that I can't even pronounce. It's indigenous to Kansas, but they made the, 150-year-old fence post.
That's an impressive fence post.
Yeah.
So random question that showed up in my head. So as homebrewers, what do you find is the most common method of cleaning equipment, and how is that different from what you do as a pro brewer?
So everybody's familiar with the PBW, and nothing wrong with that. I mean, we sell something very similar, but when you get into a problem that I see quite often, to be honest with you, is the non-caustic cleaners don't have the same pH as caustic. If you think about the 0 to 14 pH scale and 7 being neutral, and it's logarithmic. It's not, So the thing about in a pro brewery, and I always teach people, is when you're cleaning with caustic, you want to be above pH 12. And that's to me the big difference is you need good PPE, number one, to do that. And especially if you're cleaning like a kettle in the heat exchanger with 160 to 180 degree water, you better be careful, because if that lets loose, and burns and those are horrible and they can be fatal. If you get burns on enough part of your body in 3rd degree, in which I've had one, early on in my career, and 3rd degree burns are nothing to sneeze at. I mean, you got to be really careful. But yeah, that's the big thing. And then the other thing is, I just use, the non-caustic cleaner and, this foamy, acid anionic surfactant, sanitizers. Like, yeah, you need to get a pro sanitizer, like the peracetic acid, or the acidified sodium chloride, or, even ozone. I think is I'm a big fan of oxygen for sanitizing. And they all have that in common. They're not bleach. Stay away from bleach. Sodium hypochlorite, again, the salt component. But that's the big difference between going from homebrew going into pro is you probably need to up your game, because it's always worked for me as a homebrewer. Like, you're not a homebrewer anymore. It's like your equipment's there. Even going up to a nano brewery, brewing on a half barrel batch at a time with your keg system, that was fine. And what you were doing was great there. Well, you're not brewing on that anymore.
Right.
You once you start doing a CIP on stuff, you want to do what the big boys are doing,
Gotcha. Well, Catherine has a good question. What are the most environmentally responsible ways to clean?
Good question. So again, that's another reason that I like oxygenated cleaners. And I think one thing that's going to go away in the future is using phosphate. That's the other thing I like about caustic. Our really built caustic cleaner doesn't contain any phosphate. We've got a new acid that's called faux-free, which is phosphate-free, so no phosphoric acid. Algae blooms are a big problem in this country, and wastewater departments are starting to lock down on phosphate. We haven't seen anything yet, but it's coming. We're ready for it. So if your wastewater district says, no more phosphate in your wastewater, or minimize it to what's just in the beer. In other words, these non-caustic cleaners are chocked full of phosphate. Phosnitric, so phosphoric nitric acid, chocked full of phosphoric, so that's phosphorus in wastewater. So to answer your question is, get away from phosphate, and use oxygenated sanitizers. And the thing about oxygen is it's biodegradable. So, and it's better for the metal. They don't contain chloride. So problem with chloride is it causes stress corrosion cracking on stainless, and it can ruin stainless over time. So yeah, that's another good thing to stay with. And in chlorinated, when chlorine, as in chlorine bleach, breaks down in the environment, it forms what's called THM, which is trihalomethane, and that's things like chloroform, which is carcinogen. So it's not good. It's cheap. Yeah, everybody's familiar with Clorox, right? And sodium hypochlorite, which 5 1/4 is the most stable one. That's I despise this stuff, and I used it. When I first started homebrewing, that was what everybody was using to rinse your bottles. And then doing the triple rinse. Use a post-rinse sanitizer that doesn't foam and is oxygenated. You'll be a lot better off.
Nice. Well, Dana, thank you so much for being here today and being under the microscope spotlight.
Yeah, I kind of want to throw a shout out again to Arrive. Thanks for sponsoring this, and I'm a big customer on the app, and I was there up at Avery when they came up with that, and I use it almost on a daily basis now. It's on my phone.
There you go. Drew has an extra add-on question. What about the outside of the tanks? Condensation can create places where mold and mildew can form.
Yeah.
Also, recommendation of flooring materials. I always used urethane mortar, but would like to get your opinion.
Oh, okay. Yeah, great questions. Yeah, so we sell a lot of quat. What is quat? Quaternary ammonia, or QAC, quaternary ammonium compound. And the thing about quat is it's really good on inhibiting mold. So you want to get the mold and mildew off, and then lay down about 1 ounce per gallon of a 10% 4-way quat. What does 4-way mean? It's 4 different quats in there, and they add up to 10% of the product. That's a good way to deal with mold and mildew. And if you can leave it on, the longer you leave it on, the better you'll be. On the outside of the tank on metal, it will leave kind of a film though. So, but quats are a corrosion inhibitor for stainless. So you got that going for them. And then on the flooring material, your thing, yeah. So yeah, I like the epoxy floors, and I think they're pretty good against caustic. And the thing that I always bothers me a lot is people don't realize how on untreated concrete acid, even wort, pH 4.5, what's in concrete? Well, it's lime. It's calcium hydroxide. So that's a good buffer on the alkaline side. Calcium hydroxide. It's not sodium hydroxide, but that's what we built our tripe washes out of. Is actually they're lime based, calcium hydroxide. But in concrete, when you dissolve that lime and you get down to aggregate, it's not good. So be careful. Make sure that your floor can withstand both alkaline and acid products. And the sanitizers usually at dilution aren't bad, but peracetic acid will rip through stuff like crazy. So in concentrate. And just a real quick thing on PAA too, that can blind you in 30 seconds if you get the concentrate in your eye. So you got to be really careful around peracetic acid and concentrate, the 5% stuff.
Okay, cool. We're with respect to everybody's time, we'll kind of seal it off there. Yes, and thank you for that plug for Arrived. We really appreciate the sponsorship. Really quickly again, for our upcoming events, everybody please, any support that you can provide is super cool. For our Tuesday talk next Tuesday, October 25th, that's going to be our game changers for your new tap room with craft beer professionals. And then November 2nd is Candace's webinar trademarks for the craft brewer. So if you can tune in for either of those, that would be super cool. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dana, and wishing you all a great afternoon. Go ahead.
I'm gonna make a request, because since the the trademarks webinar is really the first thing that we are doing that is focused at the startup brewery. The more you guys can basically just like push that on your social media to any prospective brewers who might be following you. I want to see how, I obviously would love the contributors to be there, but I want to get as many startups and people that we can educate as possible. So just a quick plug for forwarding it on your social media. Let's try and reach just as many startups as we can.
Yeah, cool. Absolutely. And I'll send a reminder email as well to follow up and reinforce that. So super
Thanks.
cool. Awesome. Thank you all for being here. Wishing you a good evening
Yep.
and hope to see you at the next adventure.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you again, Dana.